While he was playing a fantasy-themed game called Cross Reverie, Sakamoto Takuma is visited by two beautiful girls and taken into a world that is almost exactly like the world of Cross Reverie. Even though he is a skinny shut-in in real life, in the game he is known as Demon Lord Diablo, a muscular gray-haired demon with horns. Being one of the best players in the real world, in the game world he is just as powerful, but he isn't good at talking to people, so he assumes the persona of a demon lord, acting dramatically and arrogantly. The two girls who summon him, a blonde airhead elf called Shara and a serious black-haired cat girl called Rem, try to cast an enslavement spell on him. Since he wears the Demon Lord's ring, an item that reflects all magic, they became enslaved by him instead, unable to remove the magical slave collars that appeared around their necks. Traveling together to a town called Fautra, they stay at an inn when Celestine Baudelaire, the head of Fautra's Mage Association, visits their room and asks the girls what happened to them. Telling them it's important for the fate of the world to find a way to release Rem from the enslavement magic, she leaves. Later, Diablo convinces Rem to reveal him the reason why she is important. The soul of a powerful demon lord called Krumskull has been sealed within her. Feeling sorry for her, Diablo promises he will help her destroy Krumskull, making Rem cry out of happiness, him being the first person who said he would stay by her side after hearing her secret. The following day, walking around the demi-human district populated by elves, dwarves, catgirls, demons, and other races, Diablo and the girls visit the Adventurers Guild and register as adventurers so they can start earning money for a living. They meet Sylvie the Guildmaster, who accepts them into the guild and immediately gives them their first quest, defeating a Madara snake in the woods. After entering the forest, Diablo and the girls are ambushed by a squad of elven archers who've come to see Shara, revealing she is the princess of the elven kingdom called Greenwood. Shira ran away from the kingdom because she was unhappy, her brother wanting to force her to marry him and have his child. She refuses to come back with the elves, and when they say they are going to take her with them by force, a fight breaks out. The elves attack, firing both their regular and magical arrows, but all of them just bounce off Diablo, who then casts a spell which freezes the terrain in a huge circle around him, immobilizing the archers. After Shara tells the elves one last time she wants to stay with her new companions instead or returning to Greenwood, she returns to the inn together with Rem and Diablo. The next day, Diablo and Shara head on a quest to deliver some food to a fort at the Bridge of Ulug. They reach the bridge where the knights tell them a huge army of Fallen, a race of evil and powerful monsters whose goal is finding Rem and resurrecting Demon Lord Krumskull, are heading towards the fort. When Diablo realizes the knights guarding the fort are weak, he decides to fight off the Fallen all by himself. Soon, he sees a horde of Fallen who look like large bipedal animals with red eyes advancing towards the castle and faces them, fighting them off successfully. Back in town, while Rem is talking with Celestine, one of her guards suddenly barges in crazed, stabs himself with a black sword. It causes an alligator-like Fallen called Gregor to emerge from his body, targeting Rem and destroying everything in his path. At the fort, an emotionless girl carrying a halberd appears before Diablo, calling herself Edelgard, the strongest lancer of the Fallen. Fighting against her, Diablo manages to dodge or block all of her lightning-fast halberd thrusts, and after hearing from the knights that Celestine and Rem have been attacked, he quickly casts a destructive spell that blows away everything in front of him, destroying the Fallen and leaving Edelgard in a crater incapacitated but alive. Diablo teleports back to town, finding Rem and Celestine driven into a corner by Gregor, who he immediately starts to fight against. Blocking his spells, Diablo uses the same gravity magic as Gregor, only significantly stronger, to overpower him completely and finally seal him in a dimension of darkness. 10 days later, after Diablo recovers his magic, Sylvie visits him at the inn to tell him the Kingdom of Greenwood demands that the Lord of Fautra, Chester Ray Galford, hands over Shira to them in 10 days, otherwise they will wage war. Because of Diablo's connection with Shira and his recent successes, Galford asks him to stop war from breaking out. Diablo panics and wants to refuse, but when he hears that Shira's brother Prince Kira has put a huge bounty on her, he gets angry and promises to protect Shira whatever happens. Galford, a gloomy middle-aged man, wants to settle the problem by simply handing Shira over to the elves, but Diablo is against it. When Shira says she wants to be free and find her own worth outside of the royal family, Galford is convinced they need to find another solution. He introduces Diablo and the girls to Alicia Cristella, a very diligent glasses-wearing Imperial Knight woman who joins them. The next day, Diablo and the others find out about a slave caravan which came to town and visit it, hoping the slave owner would know how to break the enslavement spell Shira and Rem are under. Meeting the slave owner Medios teaches Diablo how to see the flow of magic, but it is too complicated to easily destroy. Later, after the group return to the inn, a flute is heard outside the door and a blonde male elf enters the room, turning out to be Shira's brother Kira, who immediately asks Shira to come back to Greenwood with him. After Shira refuses, he tells her to think it over once more, and when he comes back the next day, he will accept whatever she decides. The next morning, while Diablo and Shira are making potions, they hear the sound of Kira's coach arriving. All of a sudden, Shira tells Diablo she's going back to Greenwood after all, immediately joining her brother outside and leaving with him, while Diablo is left behind confused. When Alicia and Rem return to the inn, Diablo tells them what happened and they conclude Shira has been brainwashed by Kira's flute, immediately departing to rescue her. Inside a tent in a forest, Kira is keeping Shira captive, preparing to brainwash her into loving him. He is interrupted by Diablo, Alicia, and Rem, beating his elven guards and storming the tent. Diablo frees Shira, but with a gesture, Kira brainwashes her to once again believe she wants to return to Greenwood with him. When Diablo activates his enslavement spell, ordering Shira to tell him her true feelings, the two spells clash in a flash of green light, the enslavement spell overpowering the brainwashing and enabling Shira to say she wants to be free with tears in her eyes. Losing his composure in anger, Kira summons a force hydra, a huge dragon-like beast with 4 heads that is so strong its summoning is forbidden. As the hydra goes berserk, destroying everything in its sight and even turning on Kira, Diablo destroys one of its heads with a spell, but the head regenerates quickly. Shira tells Diablo the hydra has a core that will unsummon it if hit, but instead of searching for the core, Diablo uses an electricity spell on the hydra's entire body, destroying the core wherever it was. Diablo prepares to kill Kira, but Shira stands in his way. Suddenly, Galford and his guards appear out of nowhere, beheading Kira with a sword. Galford declares they are now at war with Greenwood because Kira brought elven soldiers to his territory, ordering his guards to exterminate the elven troops hidden in the forest and capture Shira, revealing he was waiting for an excuse to start a war with Greenwood all along. Diablo fights against Galford, but his speed, strength, and strategy are unlike anyone he's fought before in this world. After a long fight, Diablo manages to surprise Galford with a thunder spell and bring him to his knees, but lets him go, saying he will destroy him if he tries to attack again. The next day, Alicia travels to the Imperial capital in order to explain the whole situation to the Emperor, while one of the elven soldiers tries explaining it to the King of Greenwood. 3 days later, while Diablo, Shira, and Rem were bathing, they are approached by Edelgard, the fallen warrior. She stoically says she has found out the demon lord Krubskulm's soul is inside Rem, but won't attack them because Krubskulm's soul is delicate. Claiming there is a ritual of resurrection that will revive Krubskulm without risking Rem's life, Edelgard proposes a deal with Diablo and the girls to meet in 3 days at Starfall Tower. Diablo accepts the deal because he intends to defeat Krubskulm as soon as he is resurrected. At the day of the agreement, while walking towards the inn, Alicia tells Diablo and the girls about a paladin named Sadler coming to town and warning them that he will torture anyone who he suspects is connected to the demon lord. Just around the corner, they run into Sadler himself, accompanied by a few other paladins. While they're introducing themselves, Diablo accidentally says he is a demon lord, as he always does, leading to Sadler attacking them and trying to turn Diablo into stone with a spell. But he gets turned into stone himself, thanks to Diablo's ring of magic reflection. After Sadler's guards leave, carrying him away, the group tells Alicia about Rem's secret and Alicia promises to help them as much as she can because they're friends. That night, Diablo, Shira, Rem, and Alicia meet Edelgard on top of Starfall Tower, where she has already prepared everything for the ritual. Rem lies down on top of an altar, where Diablo pours his magic power into Krubskulm's soul in her stomach. As he is doing that, the ritual circle drawn around the altar starts shining in a blinding red light, and finally the demon lord is reborn, even though he unexpectedly took the form of an overly arrogant little girl. The revived Krubskulm is naive and doesn't remember how to fight, so she listens when Shira and Rem tell her killing is wrong. When Shira gives her some biscuits, she decides the reason she has been reborn is in order to devour all the biscuits in the world, and they befriend her, concluding that Krubskulm doesn't need to be killed if she isn't a threat to humanity anymore. On their way back to town, an eldritch flying creature called Ulirex, the oldest and strongest of the fallen, lands in front of them, greeting Krubskulm. Angered when he realizes the demon lord is incomplete, he tries to kill her so he can resurrect her properly once again. In the midst of a struggle, Ulrix overpowers Edelgard, but Diablo saves her from death by deflecting Ulrix's crystal lance and stabbing him with it, then finishing him off with a lightning bolt and forcing him to run away. As Edelgard escapes into the forest, Diablo and the girls, including Krebskolm, return to the inn. The following day, at a coffee shop, they meet with Celestine, where they all agree that Krebskolm, now nicknamed Clem, isn't dangerous anymore. Later, walking around town, Alicia separates Rem and Clem from the others, leading them into a dark street where she drops her act pretending to be their friend. She reveals she wants the demon lord to kill the mortal races in order to make the world more beautiful, thinking humans are ugly and corrupt. When Sadler appears behind them, Alicia accuses Rem and Clem of being demon lord worshippers, making him arrest them. Waking up in a cage, Rem makes Clem promise she won't kill anyone and stay as she is now until they are taken into a church, where Sadler, who thinks he is a god who dispenses justice, tells them they will attain salvation by torture. The scene changing to the Bridge of Lulav, Lord Galfred and his knights see an army of fallen, including Edelgard, approaching the fort. Back at the church, Sadler starts torturing Rem while Clem watches, unable to do anything except yelling at him to stop, until Sadler attacks her for causing a commotion and she gets angry, making Sadler notice she's actually a fallen. Sadler, lifting his sword to kill her, it's interrupted by Rem, stabbing her instead of Clem, who, seeing this, flies into a rage and turns into her complete form, a giant black demon with massive horns and numerous red eyes. Just looking at him, she completely decimates Sadler, leaving nothing behind before flying out of the church. Sheret and Diablo, finding out what happened, arrive at the church, where they face the complete Krebskolm, who doesn't recognize them, having lost her sense of reason. At the bridge, the fallen, among them Alicia and Edelgard, rejoice, seeing Krebskolm as completely resurrected. As Diablo is dodging her attacks, Krebskolm is trying to hit him with her powerful fists and beams of dark energy fired from her mouth, while he is setting up a spell around her by placing seals on the ground. At the church, Shira heals Rem, who's on the floor bleeding, using health potions until she finally wakes up feeling better. Diablo places the last seal, he activates the spell, damaging Krebskolm with the elemental powers of fire, water, and wind, but not defeating her. Rem comes out of the church so Krebskolm can see she is alive, which calms her down and makes her return to her incomplete form. Back at the bridge, seeing Clem has reverted to her incomplete form, Ulrix blames Edelgard, but Alicia helps her escape. As morning comes at the ruins of the church, Diablo decides to cast the enslavement spell on Clem, so she can stay with them without going berserk again, and after Shira and Rem convince her Diablo is a good person, Clem agrees. That night, after returning to the inn, Alicia suddenly enters through the window and threatens Shira with a knife, ordering Clem to heal Edelgard with her fallen powers. Alicia leads them to Edelgard, wounded on a bed, and as Clem heals Edelgard and everyone relaxes, Alicia explains her reasons for wanting to kill all mortals. Ever since she was little, she saw so many self-centered, greedy people who pretended to be good. She started thinking that humanity as a whole is ugly and doesn't deserve to exist. Preparing to commit suicide in order to atone for her sins, Diablo tells her death isn't a way to atone, and that she should walk her own path in life. The following day, Alicia says goodbye to everyone, filled with hope and going on a journey to find herself, while Diablo, Shira, and Rem continue their adventures. Hey, thank you for staying all the way till the end. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. It takes only a second, but it means everything to us. Have a great day and see you in the next video.